All right, let's start talking about sight fishing. We're going to do sight fishing tonight, y'all. Everybody here like sight fishing?
I'm blind.
You might be wasting your time on that. Everybody else here like sight fishing? Y'all like to see them on the bed and try to catch them?
Okay.
Has everybody here tried it?
Yeah.
No.
Haven't tried it? Okay, well, I'm going to give you as much knowledge as I can, so if you do try it, hopefully you'll have a leg up, because tonight we're back at our every bi-weekly Lake Fork Bass Fishing Seminar here at Lake Fork Marina, and I love sight fishing. So I'm going to break down and try to give you guys an absolute complete guide to sight fishing tonight for all of those in the audience and all of those watching behind the camera as well. It's probably my #1 favorite way to catch them, and I think part of that is it's limited. You get a couple months, maybe 3 months out of the year where you get to do it, and then that's it. So we're targeting spawning bass that we can visibly see on beds, and there's all kinds of aspects of it. Everybody thinks, I've heard over the years people, the guys that don't like sight fishing, the detractors would say, well, anybody can throw a bait in a bed and catch them. No, you can't. Like, if anybody that says that to you guys, they've never sight fished. Because are there some fish like that? Yeah, and it's usually about that big. You know what I mean? It's the better fish, and the majority of even the fish that big, you don't just roll up there, first time you see him, pitch your bait in there a few times and he bites. It just doesn't work like that for 99.9% of the fish, especially as times move on and we get more and more pressure on these fish, right? I mean, everybody knows we're getting more pressure on these fish than they've ever had in their life. Everybody understand that? With high school fishing and college fishing and the advent of live coverage and COVID a couple years ago, putting everybody with free time on their hands. I mean, the entire industry has blown up, from bass boat sales to lure sales to just everybody. We just got a lot more fishing license sales in almost every state across the country. Hit an all-time record in 2020 because of people having downtime on their hands with COVID. So fishing has grown a lot. These fish receive a lot more pressure than they used to on any lake you go to. When we were on Lake Palestine, what I keep saying all day, Vic, I was like, dude, this is like Fork on spring break out here, man. Looks like spring break on Fork in '99. Like it was wild how many boats were out there. So, and Lake Palestine's a pretty popular lake, but I fished it years ago before I started guiding quite a bit. It was never like that. Never like that. So, it's happening. Fish are getting more pressure. There's no doubt about it. These fish are going to get harder and harder to catch. Make no mistake about it. It is a limited resource. And I know a lot of the old heads wish the sport would quit growing. I've heard that said by guys that are in the industry go, man, I wish we'd quit growing this industry. I'm tired of it. I can't catch them no more. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But I realize, yeah, the fish are getting harder to catch. But at the end of the day, unless you're weighing them in on the Elite Series, the Bass Pro Tour, or whatever they call the FLW Tour now, like, at the end of the day, it's really not about what you bring to the scales. It's not about how many fish you can go catch. Fishing is an experience. It's something that's good for your soul, I think, for most of us. And there's so much more to it than, man, I caught 30 pounds today or whatever. Like, it's just there's a lot more things that are more important in fishing for me, and I think for most people, than how many fish you catch. So don't worry about the fish being harder to catch. We're here to try and help you every way we can. So right now it's spawn season on every lake that I've been to, a bunch of lakes. Y'all know we've had a lot of wind this year, like about as much as I can ever remember. I know it gets windy at the end of March, early April. That happens quite often. But as far as day in, day out, consistent 20-mile-an-hour sustained winds, I think we've had a higher percentage of days this year than we've had in my memory. Maybe there's been a year close to it, but I don't remember it. And for that reason, I've spent a lot of time on other lakes. I really have. I mean, I've been fishing Lake Fork. I was on Lake Fork this week some. I've been on Lake Fork every week some. But I've been a lot of days, a lot more than normal for me, on other lakes, particularly smaller lakes around the region. They're all doing the same thing right now. We've had a year where everything was kind of delayed. We were a little late on the spawn, colder weather. And so every lake you go to right now, this weekend, if you go to a lake, or next weekend, there's fish, and a big percentage of the fish are on beds. So sight fishing is going to be a sure enough guaranteed way for you to be around the right fish right now. So that's why I wanted to talk to you guys about it tonight. So many details. Like I said, there's so many little details that go into sight fishing. If anybody has any questions at any time, please just yell them out however you want to do it. if you want to be good at sight fishing and you don't want to just go around and catch a few smaller fish, if you want to be able to go and target the bigger fish and be consistent day in, day out, no matter how locked in they are or not, then you have to, like everything else in fishing or really life, you've got to work harder at it. You've got to pay more attention to detail at it than the rest of the people are willing to do, right? You've got to mentally be engaged and try harder. And so I've done that over the years. I've tried really, really hard over the years to be good at sight fishing because I enjoy it so much. So I'm going to try and give you guys some of those details tonight. And I'm sure there's no way I can sit here in one night, in an hour or two, and give you every detail. But I'm going to give you everything I can. And like I said, that's why I want you guys to ask questions if you have a question about anything. But this whole game of sight fishing starts with the search and the hunt. And the details start right there. You've got to be conscious of everything you do. My graphs turned off, right? Turn all my graphs off. Noise is a factor in this deal. I think noise in a boat probably gets overplayed by most fishermen most of the time, but not with sight fishing. Now, we can be in the boat and we can talk, and that's fine, but when you step or when you close a lid, anything that affects the shell of that boat, that fish is going to get spooked at times, or some fish will get spooked at times from those things. I've literally been staring at a fish on a bed and hear a customer on the back deck digging something out of a box, and when he shuts the lid too hard, I watch the fish go shoo. I've seen it with my own eyes, so that is something you've got to be conscious of. Same thing. Now, when I'm looking for them with my trolling motor, I kind of contradict that a little bit, okay? And this is the first step of the process, is looking for them on your trolling motor. I don't have a rod in my hand. I never flip to a fish when the boat's on top of them when I'm looking for them. I have so many customers that I have to literally, they've got a rod in their hands, and I go, oh, there's one. And when they see it, they're like, I'm like, no, don't flip, right? Because I don't want to flip to that fish while he's aware of the boat. The first flip I make to that fish, I want to make sure he's unaware of the boat. So how do I do that? Here's how I do that. I will go down a bank line, and I will get right on top of the area where I can barely see the bottom. So some of you may have heard some people, like David's talked about how I've got good eyes and all that. I don't really think my eyes are any better. I just think I have more experience in looking for these fish. So if you want to see the fish, and I promise you, you do want to see the fish that are deeper, in dirtier water, and harder to see, where most people won't see these fish. Number one, the deeper fish are sometimes tend to be bigger fish, a lot of the time. But B, if you can see the fish that most people don't see, they're a lot easier to catch, guys. I mean, so much easier to catch. So what I do is get right where I can just barely make out the dark and light differences in the bottom, like just barely. So if a shadow moves over it, I can barely see that shadow. I get right there, and I look from right below my boat up to the bank. Now, in some lakes and some areas, that may mean that I am further than I can cast from the bank. That's okay, because here's the deal about bass, especially the bigger ones. They will spawn out to where you can just barely see them. And some will spawn a little bit deeper, and we're never going to see those that spawn a little bit deeper. But they will always spawn all the way out to where you can just barely see them. I don't care if that's 20 foot deep or 10 foot deep or 1.5 foot deep where you can barely see the bottom, right? They will always spawn out to that and a little bit past that because it's all about light penetration. They have to have light penetration to incubate these eggs and hatch these eggs. So they're going to, and especially the bigger fish are going to get in that deeper water where they're a little more comfortable. Like smallmouth and clear water lakes up north will spawn in 15 foot of water, 20 foot of water. Some of these lakes in West Texas, they'll spawn in that deeper water where the water's real gin clear. So always keep that in mind. Get to where you can barely see the bottom. Look from that line in. Doesn't do you any good to look past that because you can't see them anyway, right? So that's how we start. Now, I will actually, when I'm looking for those deeper ones specifically, turn my trolling motor up and go faster and stop it and make noise with my boat. Why am I doing that? That doesn't make any sense, does it?
Make them move.
Make them move. That's very smart. Very good. So when I'm looking down in that deeper water and the fish, if he sits still, I'm never going to make him out because I'm looking where I can barely see him, right? I've got to make that her move. Hopefully it's her, right? You know what I mean? So hopefully it's her, not him. But you've got to make them move or you won't see some of those fish. So I'm right on top of them. I can barely see. I'm making noise with my trolling motor. That fish will move. Now, that's where the game starts. The first time you see them move is where the real sight fishing game starts. Because from the moment that fish moves, I am making a decision about how to play that fish or whether I do or don't play that fish from that first movement, right? So that first tail kick of that fish, how hard it swims off, how slow it swims off, how fast it'll come back towards that spot, all of that, how long it takes, how far on top of that fish did I get before he moved. All of these factors factor into how locked in is that fish, how aggressive can I play that fish, because the more aggressive you can play a fish, the faster you can catch them. The faster you catch one, the faster you move on to the next one, right? That's all part of being a really good sight fisherman. So when I watch that fish move, now sometimes I'm seeing that fish up on the bank 20 yards away or whatever, 30 yards away. And if I'm 30 yards away and that fish bails off that bed right away, I don't care if he comes back or not. I'm not really going to mess with that one. If he won't even stay when I'm a long ways away, like a really far away from him, if he's already leaving the bed early, what I call them is early movers, that fish is probably, when I get close enough to make a cast to him, that fish probably ain't going to stay on that bed when I pitch to him. He's going to, in my experience, that fish is going to leave that bed and eventually come back. And then leave that bed and eventually come back. And he's just never really going to bite. And usually it's not your bigger fish that are going to do that. Your bigger fish, once they move one time, if they're not locked on, they just don't come back. You know, that's just kind of how they are. So I like for a fish to swim off slow. I like for them to wait till the boat gets right close to them. And when they do swim off, I like for them to swim off slow. If they'll just swim off slow, especially if they'll swim off slow, go over there to that couch, then turn around, kind of look back at their bed, I can work with that. 9 times out of 10, I can catch that fish. Okay? So that's the first thing. Now, the other thing I don't do, if I happen to see one far away in some clearer water, and he doesn't move, he hasn't seen me yet, he's not aware of the boat yet, right? Because he hasn't wiggled, he's not looking at me. A fish will look at you when your boat goes by. They'll face you, and as your boat goes by, they'll turn and watch you. But if that fish is looking out here, and I'm looking at him from here, my boat's over here, if I see him far away, I'll go ahead and drop the poles before he sees me and fish for that fish without going by him. Okay? But that's the only time that I fish for a fish without going by them, is if I see them before they notice me. And usually that happens at a pretty good distance, and you're going to have to be a really good pitcher of the bait. You have to make a long pitch and be really accurate with it, because that's tough. Oh, oak pollen, boy.
I got a question.
Yeah.
When you're sight fishing, all right, I open a can of tuna, half of it jumps out. I mean, that's my luck fishing. But when you're sight fishing, 9 times out of 10, you're going to catch the male. Do you believe in letting the male go?
Well, you don't have to catch the male.
To throw it back to catch the female?
Yeah. Somebody remind me where we were about. I just covered the ones that I throw to without going by them, so I can pick up there in a minute. You don't have to catch the male. That's what people mess up with. Try to not catch the male first. Like, these fish don't swallow these baits. I think I can for sure count on one hand how many bedfish, of the thousands of bedfish I've caught, have actually swallowed a bait. And I let plenty of them run with it, trying to shake them off. I've shaken off so many bedfish, and they never swallow the bait. Even if they takes a minute to let go of it, they'll swim over here, and they'll swim over here. That's my baby. I better not do that again. they swim all over the place, back and forth, and here, there, and yon, and then finally they'll spit it out. I mean, literally less than one hand worth of fish over the years, if I count when I'm doing that, have swallowed the bait. Because I can't tell you guys how many times I'm setting up a fish for a customer, and I'll pitch in there to kind of read it a couple times, and that fish will bite the bait and start swimming off. And I shake those fish off because I don't want to catch it. I want my customer to catch it, right? Or when we're filming, right, and somebody's getting cameras ready, and I'm trying to just read this fish, and it bites. I can't catch this fish till the cameras are on, so I got to shake it off. So when you roll up on a male-female pair, if you can tell which one bit your bait, don't catch him. Let him swim till he spits it out. And just keep doing that until the female bites. Right? Now, there's times when you can't really see the bed very well. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute because that's a big part of it. I think that's the right way to do it. I think you should not see clearly most of the fish you catch on the bed. I think if you see most of the fish you catch on the bed real clear, I don't think you're not going to catch near as many fish and near as big a fish. Okay? But when you can't see clearly which one's biting the bait, well, when they bite and move with it, you got to swing on it. If you catch a male, I've seen it go both ways, Mike. I mean, it can really be either or. If you hold the fish in the boat and go to that female, she might leave that bed. I've seen her leave that bed altogether. And I think what they do is they go looking for another male. Like maybe that's a fish that hasn't dropped her eggs yet or whatever. But I think they go and find another male. Now, if that female has just dropped her eggs and you hold that male, I think that's when the female will get on the bed. So what I've gone to now is, even if it's, say on Lake Fork, it's a slot fish, well, I've usually got 3 people in the boat. At least 2 for sure every day that I'm fishing. So if we catch a male, we will literally just hold him in the water beside the boat, whether it's a slot fish or whatever, because now you can't keep a slot fish in live well, but I can hold him by his mouth in the lake. So we'll do that, and then I'll just watch. And if she gets up there, I'll make a pitch or 2 to her, and if she's acting right, okay, let me hold the fish, you go catch her, right? But a lot of times when we hold that male, that female will go away. If that female goes away, if I don't see her come back on that bed pretty quick, man, let that male go. Because I'll tell you what else I've done on Lake Fork, because I noticed this, this used to be my philosophy on Lake Fork, was catch the male, let him go immediately. Because I saw too many fish that walked off when the male wasn't on the bed. And I've caught a male off a bed 3 or 4 times before we caught the female. So we just kept catching the male till the female bit, till he got sore mouth enough he wouldn't bite no more. And then the female got up there and bit. And that just takes a long time to do that. But if she's big enough, y'all know how it is. You find a 10.
When you did that 3 and 4 times, did you use the same bait every time? Or
oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about the bait we use later, and I use one bait. I use one bait for every bed fish.
I don't know if you bit the same bait 4 times.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it has nothing to do with the bait. It has bait selection is by far the least important thing. I mean, you got to get the right type of bait, but the actual bait you use is the least important thing that you'll do when it comes to sight fishing. Least important thing. So that's kind of my deal now. Is I try to hold the male in the water, by the boat, by hand, read the female's behavior. If she's not showing back up right away, I'll let him go. If she shows back up right away, then yeah, we'll hold him until we catch her. And we'll literally have somebody holding him, maybe me sometimes, holding him on the side of the boat, and as soon as we set the hook on the female, just let him go get the net. So, does that answer your question?
No.
Okay, so let's talk back about reading these fish and pulling up on them. So, we pull up on these fish, like I said, from distance, I'll power pull down. But 9 times out of 10, most of the time what I'm doing is I'm rolling by this fish. And I'm going to kind of put pressure. I'm going to keep getting closer and closer and closer to the fish until it moves. I want to see how much it'll tolerate. I want to see how committed it is to that spot. And I want to see how fast it runs when it leaves that bed. All these things, like I said earlier, factor into how aggressive that fish is, how locked in he is. I will never make a cast of that fish when it's aware of the boat. Never. My first cast will always be when that fish has no clue where the boat is. I will go past that fish a good ways. And usually what I'll do is, okay, that fish was right there. I want to come back and fish for that one. Well, he's right in front of that post right there. And then I'll keep going down the bank and I'll mark another one. Well, he's right over there in front of that little, whatever that hat rack, sticker rack over there is. That fish is 2 feet in front of that. And then that fish is over there in that corner. And then we'll loop back around and start on this one. So this one's had plenty of time to forget about the boat, right? Because the fish don't, y'all realize fish don't remember nothing. Like, they don't have a memory. Like, you give them a few seconds, they done forgot you were there, dog. Like, they don't even know you're in the area code anymore till they hear you again. So, I will pull up to that fish, and especially if it's a more skittish one, right? I'm worried it's a little more skittish. I want to point the nose of the boat at the fish. I want to make the profile of the boat smaller. So that's going to give that fish less chance of being aware of my boat. So if that fish is right here and that bank's running this way, right? There's a bank over here and that fish is right here. I'm going to, after I look at all this little area, I'm going to bring my boat back and point it right at him. And as soon as I see the outline of the bed, I'm dropping the power poles, guys. Notice what I didn't say I saw.
Fish.
The fish. I did not see the fish. As soon as I can make out exactly where the bed is, I'm dropping my power poles. From there, I will pitch the bait well behind the bed, as far as I can get away with behind the bed, and I do this thing that I call the thumb and drag, and everybody I see gets it wrong. Customers get it wrong. Even after I told them how to show them how to do it, they get it wrong most of the time until we work with it for a while, then they'll get it. But what you do is you make a pitch, and as soon as the bait hits the water, you thumb your spool and you lift your rod tip. And what that does, your bait hits the water well behind the bed so it doesn't splash on the fish or spook the fish. It hits the water. As soon as it hits, it goes, and it goes right under the surface where you can see it. So now I can see my bait, and I drop that bait right behind the bed. And what I will tell you is the further away you are, you need to drop it further behind the bed, because with the prism that the water creates, when you drop it, what you think is the back of the bed, you probably, if you're a good ways away, you probably just fell down through most of the bed. You're in the front half of the bed now, front third of the bed. So you need to drop it behind the bed until you get an exact feel for where the back of that bed is. And you can usually feel the difference in bottom content in the bed. You know, like right now on Lake Fork, it's not that easy because everything's just bare bottom for the most part. But the good news about that is you can drop it way behind the bed and just drag it up. Normally when we have some type of grass, some type of flooded junk, dead grass, whatever on the bottom, you've got to drop that bait right on the back edge of the bed or your bait's going to get covered up in grass or something else, right? And then sometimes you try to shake it out of the grass and the bait pops out and hops all the way through the bed and you got some issues there. And that's what I've been dealing with on these other lakes I go to that have vegetation. You've got to be real accurate with dropping that bait right in the back of the bed. Right now on Lake Fork, you just drop it back behind the bed and slowly shake it up to it, see where that fish responds to. So first cast in there, I don't see the fish. You know, if I'm lucky, right when I pull up, that fish will be sitting right on that light spot, and maybe I can make out a shadow. All I see is a black shadow. I can't see dots. I can't see belly. I can't see any of those details. If I'm lucky, I'll be able to see the shadow of the fish sitting on the bed if he's locked on. I'm going to pitch that bait well behind, and the first cast that I make to him, I'm going to try to swim that bait within a couple inches of his nose. So if he's sitting this way, I'm going to try to swim that bait right here. If he's sitting this way, I'm going to try to swim right here. If he's this way, I'm going to try to swim right here. I'm just going to try to get within an inch or two of his nose, but I don't want to hit him on the first cast. If he responds well to that, a lot of times if you do everything right, that fish will go and maybe even bite on the first cast. Like a lot of times they will. But if he just responds positively to that, on the next cast, I'm going to try to put it in what I call their ear hole, which is I'm going to put it from their gill plate to the front corner of their mouth. So that fish is sitting right here, and his gill plate's right here. I'm going to try and put that bait between there and there. So right there is where I'm trying to swim that bait to. The good thing about pitching well past the bed and doing the drag and swim deal, the drag and lift deal, right, is if I pitch that bait and I'm too far to the right, I can go steer that bait into that fish. Gives you some wiggle room when you miss your pitch accuracy a little bit to steer that bait right into that fish's ear hole, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. And then once it drops down into that ear hole or drops down into that bed even on the first pitch, my first move is just a shake. I mean, and it's a pretty light shake, right? So it's going to be, y'all see how little my rod tip's moving? Look at my hand. It's barely moving. And boys, I'm going to tell you, if you talk to customers that have gotten to my boat during bed fishing season, if I could bottle that up and sell it, I'd make $1 million. Because most guys get in there to do this. Look at my rod tip, dude. Look how much I'm making that bait go. If I do that, and he's gone. Now you look at my hand; it doesn't look like I'm doing much, but look at my rod tip. But if you get just a little fast shake, man, that makes that bait get in that bed and just do that little wiggle, and it's like something in there messing with their bed, messing with their eggs. You know, it just gets their attention. But anything else, I've had customers throw in there, and they even at times have gone, man, I can't catch this fish. I go, all right, let me see for a minute. Throw it in there, go. Do my little thing, the fish goes, and they're like, oh my God. Oh, well, they get mad at me almost, you know, like, hey, gotta shake it like I'm shaking it, Charlie. I mean, and it's a feel thing that I've developed over the years more than anything. So that's the first thing. Now, one thing you can never do is let a bed fish be comfortable. I cannot stress enough how important it is the speed that you take that bait out of the bed and put it right back on them. And with the accuracy, because you can't make a bad, like some of these fish, you can't make a bad pitch. Every time that fish has, the more time that fish has no threat in his bed, his temperature cools down. You are elevating this fish's temperature and his attitude, his anger level until he bites. Because they're biting out of anger and frustration. They're not biting out of hunger. So, Vic, come here. I see a lot of guys throw a bait in a bed. Come here. Come on up here. All the way up here. I see a lot of guys throw a bait in a bed and leave it sitting still too. So if I do this, you can put up with that for a long time. Yeah. Right? Right. If I do this for a second and then I leave it for 5 minutes and do that for a second, it's going to take a long time for you to get mad enough to hit me.
It's going to take a while.
But if I sit here and go,
it don't take very long.
It's pretty annoying.
It's pretty annoying.
Y'all understand what I'm saying? Same thing with these fish. You get that bait in there, you shake, and that fish is irritated by it, and he kind of moves around on it. Well, the minute that he turns away from it or just starts sitting dead still, I actually snatch the bait. Now, when I snap that bait out of there, now I'm just popping my slack. I'm not jerking the bait all the way out of the water, but I'll shake. See, I drop my rod tip, snap my slack, right? So I'm snapping that bait out of there violently. That bait's sitting there, shoo, it's gone. That gets a reaction out of the fish too. But when I do that, I'm burning it in, boom, right back in on him as fast as I can. Now that fish has just seen that bait come in there, irritate him, fly out of there, made him go like this. What? And then next thing you know, he's back again. You see what I'm saying? Is that making sense, everybody? So that is the key, man. I'm telling you, the key is the speed and accuracy of keeping that bait just, because that's what you're doing with that bait. Like, I literally throw it in there and do this. And when you do that, they're going to move. They're going to do this. They're going to do this. They're going to do all that. And we call it spinning them. They're spinning. When they start spinning, it's about to go down. The faster they spin, the more they're fixing to bite, right? Some of them don't take any time at all. Some of them, first couple times you do that, they smoke it right away. Some of them, you got to do that over and over again to get them to bite. I will tell you, in general, the bigger the fish is, the slower you got to go. And what I mean by that, if I've got a fish that's like a 3 or 4 pounder, it's real locked on and aggressive, I'm going to throw one cast in front of it, and then I'm going to start banging it in the cheek, right? But with bigger fish, I've got to be real careful about my pitches, make sure I make accurate pitches, don't crash on her head. I'm going to be a little more hesitant to put the bait on her head. I'm going to put it in front of her a couple extra times, see how she's reacting. Then if she's not coming right up to it, I'm going to keep playing her like that until she starts coming up to the bait. Then once she comes to the bait, now I'll try to tickle her cheek with it. You know, you got to be a little more patient the bigger the fish is. Okay, you can run, and you'll learn that over time as you do it. You'll run, you'll lose some big fish that just lose interest because you got too aggressive. Okay, that's really something you're going to have to kind of learn on you out. When a fish bites, when you feel thunk, because I don't fish with white. I don't want to see the fish. I don't want to see the bait go away. I don't want to see the fish eat the bait. And I dang sure don't want my customers doing it because they'll swing too early all day long. I fish with natural colors, number one, because I think I get more bites with natural colors than I do with white. I get fish to bite faster with natural colors than I do with white. But mainly because I don't want to see the fish eat the bait. Even when I feel the fish go, I'm not swinging. It's a Texas rig, boys. How do we fish a Texas rig all year long when they bite it? If that fish ain't moving with it, you don't usually set the hook unless it just really feels funny for a long time. Then you might set the hook. Like if it's just one of them that bites it and sits still, you're like, man, I don't know. I guess I'll set the hook. It should be the same way on a bait. Here's the deal. If a fish bites a bait and spits it out, and you don't set the hook quick enough because it spit it out, you know what fish is going to do on the next cast if you make a good pitch and get it right back in there? Probably going to bite again. If it bites it and spits it again, you know what it's going to do on the next cast? It's going to bite again. And it will keep doing that until eventually it will bite that bait and walk off with it. Or bite that bait and hold it long enough for you to figure it out. Right? What you don't want to do, especially with a big one, is have that fish bite the bait and spit it right in front of their face, and then you set the hook. Because you can spook them. Or a fish bites the bait and only has the tail, doesn't have it good, and you set the hook and rip it away. You can spook like a fish that you work really hard for to get the bite, a bigger fish, a spookier fish. You can run them by swinging and missing. But if they bite and spit, they'll bite again. So I'm always overly cautious to make sure that that fish moves with the bait before I try to set the hook on them. Or they hold it still long enough that I know they've got it. In my mind. Does that make sense, everybody? As far as setting the hook, man, setting the hook and fighting the fish is just like any other Texas rig. I know we see guys on TV do this, right? And just sit there and hold it a minute before they start reeling. Not when they're sight fishing, boys, because usually that fish is up against the bank and you know where she's coming when you set the hook? Right at you. So when you set the hook, be ready. It's like immediately start turning the reel. And then if she runs away, now you can play her. Right now you can stop reeling and play her. But the initial move on the hook set, engage that reel immediately. They're going to come at you a lot of times. Every once in a while, if I can't get a fish to react, I'll start being, if a fish is sitting on the bait, like getting on the bait, then I'll start tickling its ear, doing what I told you, shaking it up against their cheekbone or whatever. And if that fish still is just not really reacting, not spinning, not really leaving, just kind of sitting there, I'll start hopping it into their face a little bit harder. Or if I can't hop it into their face, I'll just do a little short where I just snap the slack and the bait. I just try to make the bait do this, like sudden jumps, like sudden movements in the bed to try and get a reaction. That's kind of my last resort. If I can't get a reaction out of this, at some point I'm going to say, well, that fish, I'm just not going to catch that fish. I have never felt the need to resort to a wacky worm or anything like that to catch a bedfish. And I know a lot of guys will disagree with me on this. But here's my philosophy. If I've got to spend so much time that I've got to throw a wacky worm in there over and over and let it sit there and soak as slow as you have to fish a wacky worm in a bed, if I've got to do that to catch that fish, I can spend that time looking for another one that'll bite right away. Does that make sense? Like, it's all time management in this bed fishing game, because you can get hung up on a bed for hours at times on certain fish. For big ones, I had one on Toledo Bend one time that, looking back on it, I think was mid-teens, 14, 15 pounds. I spent 4 hours on that fish. Wouldn't you? It's a 14, 15 pounder. Wouldn't you spend 4 hours on it? Like, I wasn't going nowhere else. I'm here on a fun trip trying to catch big bass at Toledo Bend, and I got a mid-teen class fish on a bed in front of me. Like, I'm not going nowhere. So I literally fished for her till it was too dark to see her, and then I tried to come back next day and she was gone. You know? And the closest I ever got was that fish did bite the tail off my bait one time. She bit, I held it, I thought she had it, I swung, ripped the tail off my bait. That's the closest I got to her. And at one time I had the bait where the line was over her. She was so big, her head was so big. The line was over her head, and I would pop the bait and it would hit her, and you could see the tail of my bait kick up and then fall back down. And I popped the bait, my bait was just doing this on her head. And she was just sitting there. Wasn't reacting. I was like, man, what have I got to do? Listen, I think what Mike Long did was real bad, snagging those bed fish and then claiming those records and all that. I promise you, I thought about snagging that one off that bed that day. Like, I wanted to see that fish. You know what I mean? Like, that fish was so big, I spent so much time on her, and I was just putting my bait on her face. I mean, I could have snagged her anytime I wanted to if I take a jig, cut the weed guard off, throw it in there, and pop, and you get her, right? Now, I wouldn't have turned her in or nothing if I did that, obviously, and I didn't do it. But the thought crossed my mind about snagging that one, because it's so frustrating to see a fish that big that you can put your bait right on it and it just won't do nothing. But anyways, I forgot what I was talking about now. I got to thinking about that 14, 15 pounder. Heart palpitation. It's a big one, Elizabeth. Telling you, that was 5 years ago, 5 years ago probably now. And I still think about that fish all the time. But that's kind of it, man. Once I've done kind of my aggressive move where I'm hopping the bait at them, pretty aggressive, and they're still just sitting there and won't do nothing. Because some fish will just sit on the bed and do nothing. Some fish will. I'm going to go ahead and cut bait with that fish. And I can usually get through that process on a fish in about 15 to 20 minutes tops. Now, when that fish starts moving on the bait and acting aggressive, yeah, I'll take longer than 15 minutes trying to catch that one. But if that fish is giving me no positive cues and not ramping up at all, and I've gone through all my little shimmy shakes and hops and all that, usually about 10, 15 minutes in, actually it's not even 20, about 10 or 15 minutes in, I will cut bait on that fish and move on to the next one, because I feel like it's going to take me an hour to catch this one, 45 minutes to catch this one. I'd be better served looking for a new one that would bite faster. That's kind of the only techniques I use, guys. I use one bait. So we're fixing to get into the baits, but I don't throw anything else at them. I don't throw wacky worms at them. I will throw line through swim baits and glide baits around beds while I'm looking at times, because it can give me a clue where they'll if they don't eat it, go ahead and you catch them, they'll roll on it. And you're like, oh, well, there she is. And then I can not have to go past her to set up on it right, if that makes sense. But really, predominantly, man, I'm just looking, setting up, just like I told you. I mean, that's how I do it. Pretty much all I do when I'm sight fishing, when I'm fishing for spawning bed and bass. Let's talk about the bait. You guys know I'm a 6 cents guy. 6 cents fishing. Hey, family-run Texas company, a guy that I've known since high school owns it, and man, I know his dedication to quality and the kind of person he is, and so I love fishing his products because they're very good, and he's a good guy, so it's easy to support his company. Everything you see here except for the line and the glass bead is a 6 Sense fishing product. So that's their bobber stop. I use a 3/8 ounce tungsten. That's heavier than what most people would tell you to use. I'm going to tell you why I use it. I like to set up a long ways away from these fish, so 3/8 ounce, I can pitch that bait real far with the 3/8 ounce. If I go down to quarter or an eighth, it's hard to make those longer pitches. And, to be honest with you, I kind of want that bait to be anchored in the bottom of the bed. And when I hop that bait into that fish's jaw, or I shake it into his jaw, I want her to feel it. Like, I don't want it to be an 1/8 ounce. It's like a feather on there. I want it to kind of hit her a little bit, you know. I want her to get irritated with it. I mean, this is less irritating than this, right? So, 3/8 ounce seems to be about the right one for me. I know Kelly Jordan used to use a 1 ounce and bang them out here. When Kelly Jordan was fishing out here all the time, you know, before he kind of moved on and moved down south a little bit, I mean, I've heard him talk about it where he'll take a 1 ounce Texas rig, just like this, but a 1 ounce weight, and kind of beat on those fish with it, hit them hard in the face with it to get them irritated, you know, to really make them mad. So if you want to use something heavier, I don't really see an issue with that. 3/8 ounce, 6 Sense tungsten. I use a 3/0 ox flipping hook. I will tell you this, on the 6 Sense hooks, guys, their hooks run a little heavier gauge than most. So I use a 3/0, but really the gauge of that is like a normal 5/0, honestly. But it's a shorter shank, so I can put a really compact bait on there. This is the most important part about bait selection. You don't learn anything else about bed fishing bait selection from me, learn this. Use a short, compact bait that wiggles. That's it. I want it to wiggle with very low water pressure if possible. But man, you can use, I used to use a Berkley Rocket Crawl. I used the Lake Fork Tackle Hyper Freak. I used a Speed Crawl before, a Zoom Speed Crawl. I mean, I've used a crawl tube from Lake Fork Tackle. All these baits have one thing in common. Two things in common. They're short and compact, and they have thin appendages. Thin appendages are going to move with less water pressure and less, you can vibrate it less and get more movement with thinner appendages. This bait is as good as any for bed fishing. I use the Stroker Crawl. I've used it for the last couple years now. And in fact, until I went and filmed a video with somebody that is not a 6 Sense guy the other day, the Stroker Crawl caught every bed fish I've caught for the last 2-3 years since it's been out. It's the only bait I've used on beds. This is green pumpkin. I told you guys I like to use natural colors. My favorite color to use is watermelon red. I think dark melon red is what they're calling their green red flake bait on the 6 Sense website now. But just a green bait with red flake. I'm out of those from catching a lot of bedfish here lately. So that's why I've got green pumpkin on, because I've got to order some more dark melon reds. But if you watch the video that we posted Wednesday, we were using dark melon red on those bedfish we were catching. But that's it. I peg it, but I leave a little gap. Everybody, I don't know if those in the back may not be able to see this, but when I peg my bobber stop, and I've got this glass bead now, this is important because that adds something to it. Now, I will fish for fish at times without this glass bead, but every time that I get a fish that won't do nothing, before I'll bail on it, I make sure I try the glass bead, because I've seen so many fish that when you throw the bait in, will just kind of turn away and not pay attention. And when I put that glass bead on there and I shake it, leave that little gap between the bobber stop and the weight. When you shake it, it does this. Listen. Y'all hear that clicking? So when I put that bait in the bed, I go, it's doing that clicking in that water. Y'all know how sound carries underwater, right? So if we can all in this room hear this, when a fish is a few feet from it in the water, it's loud. Loud, loud, loud. You ever been underwater, hear a boat motor running, you pick your head up, and the boat's halfway across the lake? Sound carries underwater like you wouldn't believe. So that's really loud when it's that close to them in the bed. And I've had fish that wouldn't pay attention to the bait at all. You put that bead on there and go in there and click it in that, and that fish is just, you throw it in there and the fish wanders off. You shake it, the fish goes. Not all of them, but I've seen plenty of them that wouldn't bite. They would just right there on that bead. So I think that bead adds something to it. It really does.
Bead is, you don't have anything between the bead and the knot?
the bait, the way I rigged the bait,
Okay.
the way I rigged that bait, see, it covers my whole knot. I don't know if you can see that from there. But the way I rigged that bait, the bait covers my whole knot. Now, once your head of your bait gets worn out, it is going to slide down on there. Also, with that glass bead, if you're using a glass bead, you're going to have to retie. Probably should retie just about every fish. If not, every 2 or 3 for sure, even if they're little ones. Because just from pitching and casting, setting the hook, the fish shaking its head, even if it's a little one, that glass bead is going to start chafing your line. Okay? And I use, on my flipping rods for this, I use 20-pound fluorocarbon because we're fishing for big fish, but really we're fishing around big cover. We're fishing around, you know, on some lakes around here right now, we're fishing around the same old grass we usually have in Fort. Hydrilla, coontail, flooded pond weed, lily pad stems, things like that. Man, you need some big line to get a fish through that. And even just setting the hook on an 8-pounder from short range, you want a pretty big stout line. But you want to retie a lot with a glass bead. Now, Austin Felix from the Elite Series was down here sight fishing in their tournament last year and had a top 10 finish. And behind the stage, he gave me a little nugget. And I'm just trying to go through because, man, I buy tackle in like Lifetime Supplies. So I'm literally trying to go through the stock of glass beads I have before I go buy this because I'm cheap and tight like that. But he's using a red tungsten bead. And so it doesn't chafe his line as nearly as bad as the glass does. So he's just got a red tungsten bead that he's using. And he actually, believe it or not, pretty big honor for me, but he got the idea of the red bead from the Your Lake Fort Guide channel on sight fishing videos I've done previously and talked about it. But he went and got being one of the best in the world, he went and made it better. He went and got a tungsten bead so it doesn't chafe your line, because you'll have some break-offs now. You'll have some break-offs using that glass bead at times. You will. So you're going to retie that line quite a bit. But to me, the net positive is worth it. The gain you get, the extra bite, the fish that won't bite, catching them faster from using that bead, it's worth having to retie all the time and maybe breaking the line off. Because usually if you set the hook on a fish and break it off, retie, you can usually still catch that fish most of the time. Most of the time. So very few fish are you going to break off on and not be able to catch them again.
What about putting a bobber stop in front of the bead?
Yeah, you could. You certainly could.
Would that help it?
Man, I don't know. I mean, to me, that would mess with my OCD, right? Because if I've got a bobber stop here,
Yeah.
okay, now my bait just got longer. It just looks longer to me, even though it's a 1/4 of an inch. It just got longer, and I just don't like that. There was something called a knot shield that I used to use, and I don't know if we can. I think they were on Tackle Warehouse. They used to have some for sale here, and the guy gave me some of those, and I did a couple promotions for him on camera for him, and they were pretty good. They were like a little round cylindrical piece of rubber, like a bobber stop, but they would just slide over your line and kind of freely slide up and down. But when you slid them over your knot, they would slide right over your knot. Okay. And so I used to use those and put those over the knot and then rig the bait up over those knot shields is what they were called. Those work pretty good. But even using those, right? So even when I had a piece of rubber down there protecting it, even right, like the chafing will happen right here too. It's not just your knot.
So it's the bead itself that's
Yeah,
doing the
it's
shaking.
not just your knot. So even when you protect your knot, you've got to retie all the time. And what I found over the years is I don't really like adding another bobber stop above my bait. Maybe putting it, if it would go over the knot, I would, like the knot shield did, I can see using it. But what I found is I'm going to have to retie it just as often because most of the time it doesn't break at the knot. It breaks right above the knot where the glass bead is moving up and down. Right? It's not the actual knot that breaks. So, yeah, you're just going to want to retie a lot if you're using a glass bead. Or do like Austin Felix does and buy tungsten beads, and you don't have to retie as much. I mean, when you're sight fishing in general, you're going to want to retie, guys. Like, you're going to want to retie, especially after a big fish or after 4 or 5 fish. Like, you're going to want to retie. And the reality is, you run around looking for fish, you get your power pole set up, sit down and retie your knot before you flip at it.
You use that bead on your regular Texas rig, just fishing out?
I do once in a while, not very often because of the break-off issues and because I think when I don't know when a fish is looking at it, it's not nearly as valuable. When I don't know when I need to rattle it, really just rattle, it's just not nearly as valuable to me then. Like, I'm not going to just sit there and rattle all day. I'm just, like, that's not practical to me to fish that way. So, I really, every once in a while I will, to try, and I've done it, trying to see if it adds more bites when I'm just pitching and flipping boat docks or bushes or whatever. I haven't really found that it helps me any in that situation because you never know when the fish is on the bait till they bite it. So.
I will say this: they're the only tungsten that the paint doesn't come off of.
On the 6-inch tungsten, it's called chip-proof tungsten, and by golly, it is. I ain't seen a speck of raw tungsten on any of them.
You won't buy another tungsten.
I don't know how they did that. It's like the paint is molded in with the tungsten.
Doing it because that's slick steel. That's real slick.
Yep. Yep.
Non-porous.
Yep.
So to get it to stick, I don't know how they're doing it, but you can't beat it off. I fish it for weeks and not one bit of paint comes.
That's right. Yeah, and I'm banging it, right? Like I'm sitting there doing all that, rattling these bedfish. And I've had that one weight on there for a couple weeks now at least, and they ain't nothing. It looks brand new. Besides a couple little teeth scratches on it, you know. Rod matters. Rod matters. You don't want to get too heavy of a rod. I mean, even though we're throwing 20-pound line and we're pitching and flipping, normally pitching and flipping heavy cover with 20-pound line, you think of a 7.4 heavy or 7.6 heavy or something like that. Don't want to do that on bedfish, guys. You're too close to them. Your line's strong. You need that. You got to have some shock absorption when you're that close to them somewhere. You're not ripping this fish out of vegetation. The area you're actually setting the hook on this fish is shallow most of the time. And when you set the hook on that fish, they're going to be right at the surface a lot of time. If you don't have some bend in that rod, some shock absorption, you're going to lose a lot of fish, especially if they're not giant. You know, if you're throwing in an 8-pounder, yeah, you can use a heavy action rod. That rod's going to bend when you lean on that. But if you're throwing at a 3 or 4-pounder that you might need on tournament day or just because you want to catch it and you've got too heavy of a rod, you're going to set the hook, the fish is going to come flying at you and you're going to lose it a lot of times. So what I use is a 7.4 medium heavy, 7.3 medium heavy, but I definitely want a medium heavy rod. Medium heavy rod. I do not want a heavy action on bed fishing. That's important. This is a Lux Series. Lux Series 7.4 medium heavy. Same rod I throw a chatterbait on, actually. So this is my baby. My baby. Sleep with her at night.
What
You know
got
what I
me
mean?
there?
This one and my jig rod, I tuck them in at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, he knows how obsessed I am. Hey, we were out doing a jig fishing deal, me and Vic and one of my customers, and a paying customer, and I'm like, yeah, neither one of y'all is using this jig rod. That's my jig rod. Y'all can have these jig rods. This one is my jig rod. What's the old rifle creed from the Marine Corps, Gary? This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. That's how I am about my jig rod, man. I'm telling you. See what else. Man, I kind of think, I know there's some stuff I'm leaving out, some little details and really good nuggets that I'm leaving out. So if y'all got, please ask some questions. Maybe it'll.
As far as the sun,
Gilbert, right there. Sun angle matters. When you go in to look through a cove or a stretch, take notice of where the sun is. You want to get it, for the most part, behind you. But really what you can do is look at the glare on the water, right? So if you look on the water at any given time, especially on any kind, if the sun's out at all, you'll look this way, and it'll be like even with glasses on, there'll be like a white glare across the surface. And you'll look this way, and you'll be able to see below the surface, or see no glare. Well, you want to be looking at them this way when you're searching for them. So if you've got glare over here, no glare over here, let's go start on that end and work our way up. Right? And then when you set up on the fish, go past it, loop around, and set up with that no glare section in front of you. Paying attention to the glare on the water, the sun glare on the water, is another advanced sight fishing thing that I think most people don't spend enough time thinking about. It probably should be obvious, but it's just not. But it's really important. Like really, really, I mean, you can take a fish that you can't see at all and turn that fish into a fish where you can count the dots on the lateral line based on the glare. For sure. Glasses are important. You know, these are actually the new glass lens water lamps. These are expensive as all get out. I like to keep things real honest with you guys, even sometimes at the risk of upsetting the companies that I'm contractually obligated to, you know, okay? But, you know, 6 Cents owns Waterland, right? These are great glasses. These glass lenses are great glasses. They're really expensive. All glass lenses are. Cosas, all of them run $500. And these are $4 something.
$469.
$469. There you go. It's a $469 pair of glasses.
They come in prescription.
Yeah, mine's prescription.
There you go. They come in prescription. So, but here's the deal. If you're serious and you're doing it a lot, it's worth it. For me, it's absolutely worth it. Because I'm doing it so much, you know, the little bit of extra visibility I get matters. Because I'm looking at so many fish. If you're not an adamant sight fisherman that wants to see under the water really, really good, as you can, and like you're just kind of a guy that's like, you know, if I see one on bed, I'll fish for it, but if I don't, we'll just keep fishing. Just buy regular glasses. Get your copolymer lenses. You'll be fine. The copolymer lenses are great. They're really, really good. I've used them for years till these. This is the first year I've had the glass lenses on these. In the last couple of years, I've been using the Waterland copolymer lenses. I will say the Waterland copolymer lenses are as good or better than any copolymer lenses on the market, and they're cheaper than a lot of the recognized names. Amphibias, Costas, who else is out there? Oakley. Wiley X. Like, the Waterlands are cheaper than all those other brands, significantly cheaper, and the lenses are better than, like, they're better than Costas, in my opinion. I've used Costas, I've used Amphibias, and I think the Waterland copolymers are the best ones I've ever used. So,
What about color lens?
great question. Amber, for most conditions, you know, having like a smoke lens with a blue mirror, if it's super bright like it is today, can be a little bit better, but amber can get it done even on a day like this. But on most days, you're going to have some cloud cover in the springtime, too heavy cloud cover in the springtime, like we will on Monday and Tuesday. And no matter how cloudy and dark it is during the daytime, man, I put these are amber with green mirror. That's the best. Amber lens, green mirror. I put these on, and I can see in the darkest of conditions during the daytime, no matter how cloudy it is. I can see under the water. So amber is the one that I use. You know, when it's real, real dark, the book would tell you to use yellow lenses. And there's probably something to that. I've never used the yellow lenses, so I can't speak to it. But what I do know is I've never had a day so dark and cloudy I couldn't go bed fishing with amber lenses. They work for me. I would buy, you know, most people aren't going to go out and buy 3 or 4 pairs of fishing glasses. You know, some guys will, most guys won't. Just get you an amber green mirror, and you'll be good to go in any condition. Good question on the light. That's important. That's
I have a
important.
question.
Yes,
So,
sir.
Have you noticed the difference in the water levels, obviously, when you're sight fishing, to when you have a lot of vegetation and the relating to that for protection of making beds, and when it's gone in like conditions like you have in Lake Fork now, when the water level's low, are you finding them bedding in deeper water normally than they would if the water is up, or is it relatively the same?
No, the depth that they bed in is always going to be the same. And it goes back to what I talked about earlier. They've got to have light penetration for the eggs. So, however, it's different in different areas of the lake. Like, they're going to bed deeper down here in the cleaner water than they're going to in the dirtier water, because they've got to have light penetration to the eggs. So the bigger fish, no matter whether the visibility is 6 inches or the visibility is 6 foot, the bigger fish do tend to bed out a little bit deeper a lot of times. But all kinds of fish will bed a little bit deeper. Some are going to get right up on the bank, no matter what the clarity is. Like, you go to Lake Athens where it's real clear, and there's some right up on the bank. But a lot of times the bigger fish are going to be a little bit deeper. And there's always going to be a lot of fish a little bit deeper. And those are the fish that most people don't see. Yeah. The ones that are out way away from the bank because it's a flat area, and they're only in, you know, maybe 2 or 3 foot of water, but it's 100 yards off the bank. Well, those fish don't really get looked at. How many people spend time looking around the middle of a flat, shallow cove for a bedfish? Not very many. So I like to really look for those. So like I said earlier, I like to get wherever I can see, barely make out the light and dark differences in the bottom. Just barely see the bottom. I like to get in that depth and look from there in. That's what I like to do. Lake Fork's the same as every other lake that I've ever fished in my life. Wherever the visibility stops, where you can barely make out the bottom, that's where I look as deep as that to end. Sometimes that's, like that big one on Toledo was in 5 foot of water, where you could barely see her. But on Lake Fork, a lot of times that's 2 foot of water, you know. So it just depends. And right now, it's really a guessing game on what area you're in Lake Fork, because with no grass to speak of in the lake, with the water being low, the water gets churned up real bad and gets dirty real bad, and it changes a lot. Like, there was a day this week after that storm, was it Monday night, Tuesday morning? We didn't sight fish any that day, boys. Okay? Part of that was we probably could have hunted some down. Part of that was I had pretty severe limitations with the customers I had. Like, they weren't going to be able to pitch accurately or do any of that. And I knew these fish with that watercolor changing the way it did in these spawning areas were going to be a little more hard to see and a little more spooky because all the changes in the water column around them. That water come up on them a little bit, maybe, you know. Maybe it came up a little bit, maybe it didn't. But for sure, it dirty. Like, the first area I went to where I've been seeing spawning fish, boy, you wasn't seeing nothing in that orange juice, dog. Like, it wasn't even dirty. It was like, you know, normally we talk about chocolate milk water. No, this was like orange juice water. Stuff was nasty. Debris on the water, it's blown out. So couldn't see nothing in there. Pulled out to the mouth, found the mud line, a little clear but still dirtier than it had been. And then pulled out on a point, caught 2 or 3 fish on that first point we fished. And so at that point, seeing the casting limitations of the customers, and they were kids. I had dad and 2 kids, and you know the 2 sons were not experienced bass fishermen by any means, and we're having a hard time just chunking and winding a swim bait. So I made the call we weren't going to bed fish that day. But it would have been really hard to bed fish that day because the condition the lake's in. If we had the same grass we usually have, yeah, a few areas would get dirtied up, but most of them would stay the same watercolor, and you just keep on going about your business. But right now, I had a whole cove where I had a whole bunch of bedding fish lined up that it just ain't no chance today. So we had to make the call to not do it. So it does make a difference if you get it. We've had so much heavy wind, those areas are getting blown out with mud too at times where the wind's blowing into. Just that bottom content right now, not having grass in it, allows that water to get churned up real bad. So it's kind of a hit or miss. You gotta hunt a lot on Lake Fork right now to find the areas where you can see them. Yeah. And it's not easy getting in and out of areas. Like, you know, it's never easy getting in and out of areas on Lake Fork with the timber. But right now, there's a lot of stuff we normally run to the back of and look around the back and then run out. You ain't doing that right now because there's trees poking out of the water. So it's making it a lot harder on the bed fishing on Lake Fork this year for sure. It's a lot more challenging. Which is probably, if I'm being honest with you guys, if I'm being just real straight up, we've had a ton of wind, which got me started going to smaller lakes on those windy days. But the way those windy lakes are set up with clear water, or the smaller lakes are set up with clear water and vegetation, and some of them lakes that I go to, they got some big old bass in them, dude. Like, they, you know, I know they're not Lake Fork, but golly, we've caught some giants. So, you know, when you start seeing a bunch of fish on beds and they're big ones, it becomes, even on a non-windy day, hard not to go there. You know, when that's, you know, do I know how to do the shallow point deal? Yeah, absolutely I do. It's not really that complicated. The points the winds are blowing on and you see bait activity or birds, fish those. Like, it's not the most complicated thing in the world to figure out. But so I do know how to do the shallow point deal, but I bed fish a lot. And I think at this point, I've got a little bit of a reputation for it. And I know people that book me, I have them specifically ask and get excited about bed fishing. So when I know I can take them somewhere else and put them on bed fish all day and see them better and still catch big fish, it's really hard for me not to take them there. You know. What else we got? Did we learn anything tonight?
Yep.
Yes.
I tried to go as detailed as I could, man. It was and I know, like I said, I know I'm leaving some stuff out, and you guys just follow along on social media and follow the live. You know, I know we didn't do any lives this week, but follow the live streams. If I think of anything as I'm bed fishing out there, I'll try to throw that I didn't cover tonight. I'll try to make sure we put them on the rest of the content that we do. Man, I really can't say thank you enough. It's an interesting position I've worked myself into. I'm not the most popular guy with some, and it's pretty constant, the grief that I get. And, you know, it kind of had gone away for a while. It never fails, man. You do anything that's good or successful, or you start catching them real good, and it always pops back up. And so those of you that do follow and watch and continue to judge me just for our interactions, I can't thank you enough, because that's all I've ever asked anybody. Just judge me for our interactions.
Where is my chip?
Where is your chip? I was supposed to bring you on. It's in my boat. It's in my boat. That's where it is.
You got a one-day chip?
It's in my boat.
Yeah, you better not.
No, I told him I was going to deliver his early because I see him every 2 weeks. It's in my boat. You got to text me. You know how I am, dog. You got to text me like the day of to remind me, or I'll forget.
First, we got to text them 3 days in advance. and every day thereafter.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you keep texting me in the middle of the day when I'm on the lake, I'm gonna forget by that evening. Yeah.
Got to catch him when he gets out of the shower before he heads this.
That's it.
Like 5:30.
On his way to bed.
Listen, there's a reason. There's a reason that I have somebody else answering the website phone number, right? Like, there's a reason I got somebody else that did. I know this sounds like a cop out, but yeah, I'm telling you, I don't have time. Like, it just, when I get to going in the springtime and making content, and now especially involving my kids stuff with all that, for a while. The reality is, for a while, I blew my kids off for a few years to build this thing when they were younger. And I did that so I could build it to a point where I didn't have to do that anymore. And so now I'm really involved with all their stuff and coaching their soccer team and at all their functions. And so between all that, man, I don't, like, boys, I from the time I wake up till the time I pass out at night, I'm pretty much rolling. And it ain't, like, I've got really good friends I don't answer the phone for. It just,
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I really do.
Fans
Priorities.
There you go.
It's just a hard time of year. It's not as bad the rest. And Vic can attest to this. Other times of the year, it's not as bad. But this time of year, when I've got soccer season full swing with the boys, and it's spring, and we're running, and I've got people, I run a limited amount of guide trips because of my other business obligations now. But in the spring, everybody wants to go, and so I try to book as many as I can and do as much extra as I can. And it's just a lot, man. I'm blessed. I'm glad. It's like wonderful. But it's a lot. It's a lot to handle. And I feel bad. Like, Mike, I know when you were texting me, I feel terrible about not getting back to you till I did. I feel bad about not bringing you a chip tonight. I hate it. I feel bad when Vic texts me and I don't respond to him. I hate that I do that. But I do the best I can. That's all I can say.
I'm just jacking.
I know you are. I know you understand. So I appreciate y'all's patience on that. Those of y'all that know me personally.
Today, and he texted me right back.
There you go.
I
He was
did.
evidently looking at his phone.
He was.
I was doing office work
He was
today.
setting up his OnlyFans page.
It's the next evolution of your Lake Fork guy. Yeah. It is spawning season. I'm just saying. All right. Anything else? Well, man, thank you guys. Seriously, thank all of y'all. Thank all of y'all that watch behind the camera. And most importantly, thank Lake Fork Marina for letting us use their facility. We'll be right back here. I'll have a guest next time. Everybody was out of town this week. It kind of worked out because I like to talk about sight fishing so much, I didn't want nobody else up here anyway. So, thank you guys. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Thank you.